the next movie we're going to talk about is our classic movie, which is called Goodfellas. I think Ivan's already
One of
mentioned
my
that we were going
favorites
to
of all
review it
time.
at least twice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this was my first time watching Goodfellas. It's been on my list of movies to watch for a long time, and I'm really glad I finally checked it out. And basically, it's the story of this mob associate called his
Henry
name was
Hill.
Henry Hill. Yeah, yeah. Um, and he was. Let me see. I'm just looking at what time period this is because this is based on a true story. All right, it says from 1955 to 1980. Yeah, basically his life. I mean, his movie starts off, and I would say really, as a movie that's based on a true story, it really sort of tells really this guy's whole life. I
Yeah.
mean, pretty much, at least all the parts of his life that were interesting anyway. Um, so it starts off, he's a teenager. He has an interest in joining the mob. The mob is highly Italian. He's in New York as a kid, and basically, he's Irish. His parents are Irish immigrants, I believe, and he. Sorry, I'm not always best to explain plots, but anyway, he joins the mob, much to the dismay of his family. He ends up being disowned by them, and really, it's just the story of he joins the
It's
mob, meets a girl. She marries him. She then has to deal with all this crap that he gets them into involving the mob. Um, it focuses a lot on see what's his name plays Henry
Ray Liotta.
Ray. Okay, yeah. So he's our lead actor. He does a great job playing that character. And then we got his two, I guess, like sidekicks or best friends in the mob, played by Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. And they're both amazing too. I mean, they both could definitely win Oscars for this movie. I don't know if they did. I have to look at.
I'll look it up right
Yeah, I
now.
was gonna say, will you look up and see if any of the actors in this film got any kind of Oscar nominations or won anything for this? Because the acting in
Um,
this movie is phenomenal. I will just say that right now. Like
Joe
every
Pesci
character
won
is
Best
perfectly
Actor in
cast.
Supporting Role.
What's that?
Joe Pesci won Best Actor in Supporting Role.
Yeah, Joe Pesci. This is probably his best
He
role.
was
I mean,
fantastic.
he. So Joe Pesci plays this guy, and he's like just describing this character gets me excited because he's so interesting. But it's like he's this guy who's in the mob. He's like a direct descendant of the mob because he's Italian, and he's there's this scene towards the beginning of the movie. It's maybe 20, 30 minutes in, where Henry is talking to him. And at one point, Joe Pesci's character is making him laugh, and he's telling, they're
Keeping him
at a
funny. The
restaurant.
famous like keeping him funny
Yeah,
line.
yeah. This scene really stuck with me. But they're at this restaurant. He's making him laugh with all these people around, and Henry says to him, he's like, "Oh, man, you're funny." And then Joe Pesci, I don't want to spoil it. People should definitely watch this scene on their own.
Yeah. By the way,
But
that whole scene is not in the script. It's all improv.
okay, that's interesting to know. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can actually kind of tell now that you mention it because it seems so natural. Uh, but yeah, and this is really the first time you sort of really get to know this character. And I mean, it's just like it starts off so just lighthearted. I mean, even not the movie. The movie is not lighthearted, but just this scene starts off
No.
really lighthearted
It's got a
and
great mix of being lighthearted and then being
great mix of tone for sure.
awkward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sort of feels like real life in that department. It sort of takes you on a little bit of a roller coaster, but it starts off just kind of light, chill, and then he goes, "You think I'm funny?" And it just, I've never, I don't know if I'd say I'd never, but I very rarely have these experiences watching movies where I'm like sort of laughing, and then the laughter just so you sort of stop laughing for a second, and
Yeah.
you get really nervous, like you start feeling like, oh, is this guy gonna kick his ass? What's gonna happen? Like, is he gonna have a breakdown? Like,
No, like it gets
and,
you
and
on your feet.
yeah, and it sort of and then it sort of misdirects you a little bit, and it sort of takes you on a little bit of a ride, and then yeah, I don't know, it just that scene is great, and it really did a great job showing us sort of like introducing us to this character and like what he's going to be like the rest of the movie, and how he's going to get worse and act even worse than this, and this is just a taste of like what you can expect. And I think in that department, like what I really liked about this movie, and I mean, Martin Scorsese can tell a story so well.
You can also
Visually,
direct it really well too. Like,
visually, he can tell a great story. I mean, writing wise, getting these performances out of these actors, like it is all. This whole story is, and this is one reason I think it's just a perfect. Well, okay, I'm not gonna say it's a perfect film. I'm just gonna say it has a lot of elements of like a perfect film,
oh yeah,
in my opinion, in that it takes dialogue, it takes cinematography, it takes uh, the charisma between the actors, like the chemistry there. It takes the just every element. I feel like really adds. And what I really like about this movie is that every scene is important, and
oh yeah,
every scene is building to something else, and everything. There's a lot of characters coming in and out. I mean, but every character matters and has some kind of, even if it's a small impact on the story that comes into play later, like every character like is pretty vital to the story. um and so I think that's just a great way to like have a movie. I don't
yeah.
like when movies have so much, when they've got a lot of filler, when they've got stuff that can be taken out, when they've got characters that go nowhere. I mean, it's just a problem with a lot of movies. And this
No, and
movie,
this
this
movie
film
really like
absolutely
that.
does not do any of those things wrong. It absolutely, like, every element is important, and I like that. It always builds to something. Especially when, spoiler alert, Joe Pesci's character dies. It turns out it's a result of something he had done earlier in the movie, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, there's some karma there, but also like that, that scene is important too, and everything kind of comes full circle a little bit, and then I'm not going to really spoil how it ends, because I think that everyone should, if you really want to see how it ends, you should just watch the movie. But the ending ties in, and what Henry
It
Hill
makes
eventually
sense.
does, what he
Happened
eventually
makes
does.
sense.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say what Henry Hill does at the end, that sort of ends the story naturally. Um, it ties in very well with a scene that's set up towards the very beginning of the movie, like in the first 20 minutes, and that's really good theming, that it sort of it introduces an element in the beginning, and it comes into play at the very end, and it shows that change in his character, that after all the crap, all this crime, all the murders and the deaths and the I guess murder and death is kind of all the fighting. After all this stuff goes on, you can see like he had to make a change, because he eventually realized he had to do something different, that he wasn't willing to do at the beginning. So I mean, like this movie is really good. That's all I really have to say.
I will say it's my favorite Scorsese movie,
Me,
and
yeah.
you pretty much talked about everything that I was gonna talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, you're fine. I was gonna say that like one of my favorite things like in this movie is just that whole theme of like family and the whole theme of like looking out for each other, even if it's in like represented in like not the best way possible. The theme is still in there. Like even like when they're in like the small scenes, like you could say like when they're in prison, which isn't a spoiler alert by the way. Like they're in prison.
They're
It's
in the
very
mob. I
small.
mean, come on.
But like even like the theme of like family when they're like cooking each other's meals and they're doing all that, like it's so small, but like that theme of family is still there, even when they're at their lowest point. It's still always there.
Huge
And I
attention
think
to
that's one
detail.
part too. What?
I said huge attention to detail for sure.
Oh yeah, and like even the whole thing with like directing and cinematography for Scorsese, who's just like a master of like blending those two like factors of film into it.
There's
I,
nothing lazy about this movie, and I think that's one of the things I like about it, is that I feel like every element of the film was taken care of, and I feel like a lot of times, I mean, yeah, you and I have watched a lot of bad movies together, but I feel like because I've seen so many bad movies, that when you get a movie like this that isn't lazy and actually takes care of each element of the story
yeah,
and the filmmaking process as a whole, like it's awesome, because it's like, wow, like you can make a movie where you care about all these different things, and you're not neglecting parts of
and
the
the one thing that
the
jumped up
story.
to me, I don't know if like jumped up to you watching it, was when Henry Hill is taking his soon to be girlfriend Karen Hill
Hmm.
into the restaurant, and he goes into the back, and it's just this whole like 3 minute long tracking shot of him going into the kitchen and like him like meeting everyone and like people passing by. That's a lot of elements going into a 3 minute scene, like no cuts, even people walking by, talking to Henry, people talking to each other, blocking. All of that in one scene is just marvelous directing and
Oh
marvelous.
yeah, and it really sets up the environment. It's sort of like we were saying with Ready Player One, with how it really sets up a world is, and I felt like in a way it was kind of. I know they're kind of weird to compare, but I think it's sort of
Yeah.
similar to Ready Player One in that both films do set up a lot at the beginning and have narration from the main character, and the main character basically tells you like how this world works. And yeah, it makes the movie a little longer, but I like movies that will tell you how the world works and show you how the. I mean, not obviously not just tell you, but also show you, because I think what's great about that is it's like once you get all that out of the way, your audience is going to be so much more invested in this
Yeah.
movie that they're watching. Like, I think that's awesome.
So I hate to say this, but what did you not like about it? Because you said it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, there was really one thing I did not care for about this movie, and I'm going to try to explain it the best I can, so that it doesn't sound like I'm making fun of the movie or picking on the movie or nitpicking it. But and it's sort of a personal complaint. It's not like I would say this objectively makes the movie bad. Like, no, I would just
Right.
say this, in my opinion, uh, like I would have done it a little differently maybe. But I sort of felt like uh, the the timeline of events in this movie, the movie, like the structure of the film very much felt like a timeline. Like, this happens at this point in his life, and then this happens at this point in his life, and then this happens at this point in his life,
Mhm.
and it all leads up to something in the end, yes. But it's not like the scene, for me, I didn't really feel like the scenes really transition super well sometimes, and it sort of felt like they like a lot of these events, even though yes they were important later, they didn't really connect into the next event. Like, it wasn't like something happens and like a scene happens and then it connects with the next scene, and then it wasn't smooth in that respect. And that's sort of an opinion thing, because I think some other people could say like that's not a bad thing, and I'm not saying for everyone it is a bad thing. I just feel like for me it was a little harder to get invested in the story when I'd get really invested in a scene, and then it was like, oh, 2 years later or something, and I was
Right.
like, and then it's a completely new thing, and I'm like, oh well, I would have maybe liked to see what happened next in that, like what had happened right after that, like. So because the movie does a lot of skipping around in terms of its chronology and sort of in the timeline. uh so that's really my only complaint, just that um the lack of like always like transitioning, like the lack of sort of transitioning from one scene to the next, I feel like made made parts of the film a little disjointed for my viewing experience. And maybe if I watched it a second time, maybe I wouldn't find it that way. But that was definitely something that didn't take me out of the film, but definitely took me a little bit out of the story and maybe not as invested maybe as I could have been, because I liked all the characters a lot and I liked all the performances a lot. And um, I feel like if the story had or the scenes had been a little smoother transitioning, maybe leading up to something in, because it's got a lot of peaks and
Yeah.
valleys in terms of structure. And sometimes that works, but other times you're kind of like, oh well, I want to see it all lead to something right away. But I mean, you know like I said,
It's just
I'm
from
not, I'm
person
not,
to
I'm
person.
not yeah, yeah, I was gonna say I'm not gonna try to like downplay my own personal thoughts on it, but I'm not holding it against the movie either. um I just think, for me personally, that made me less invested in the characters than I probably would have been had it been a little smoother. That's just me, though.
All right.
Do you have any problems with the movie?
I do not. None.
Then what would you rate it?
A 10 out of
A
10.
10. 10 out of 10.
I love Goodfellas so much. Like it's my favorite gangster movie. Well, probably I don't know. It's hard. It's like Godfather or Goodfellas, but I like them on different. I like them both on like different for different reasons.
Yeah. I would give the movie a 9 because I feel like in terms of as
Yeah.
a film, man, it delivers in everything.
Yeah.
That couldn't be a 10 for me because of, like I said, I wasn't always 100% invested because of just how it was structured.
Like I want to buy it on DVD real bad.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's I mean, it's on Netflix right now, and that's how I watched it. But it's one I would definitely watch again at some point, because I would love to. Once you've seen a movie again, or once you've seen a movie for the first time, and you're sort of done with first impressions, then you can sort of study it a little more and maybe look more into those details like you mentioned. So
Yeah,
so great movie, really great movie. I'm really glad I watched it, and I'm really looking forward
awesome.
to us having this
Thumbs up.
this classics segment on the show, because for me, like seeing some of these classic movies I haven't yet seen, like it's a real treat, and everyone should watch
Yeah,
some of these movies like Goodfellas that are just like
yeah. You're
movies
welcome.
movies movies that anyone who likes film should watch them.
Yeah.
IMHO. So